Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Let's edify one another, shall we? Good evening, y'all. Okay.
Then I'm gonna have two
Flats.
lights. Yeah, but I'm not sure whether this one,
Or somewhere in between.
right. And then I got two nice lights in here, and then I'm gonna have on the sides of it two ground lights.
Do the halo lights, you mean?
No, these won't be. These will be
Oh. Spotlights.
I'm gonna have multi lights on the sides. Little round ones.
Probably make those orange. You need to live because you need to check on legality.
Yeah.
Of having those red markers on the front. So, and they will probably have to be tied into your blinkers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so then, if you're going to tie them into the blinkers, just make them. They have to be orange. Good evening. Let's edify one another, shall we? That's right. Edifying the saints and professionalism and shenanigans is our function here at CEM tonight. And we hope and pray that you will indeed be edified by your time with us tonight. I'm going to start off with a song tonight entitled I'll Never Forsake My Lord. Though my cross may be hard to bear, though my life may be filled with care, though misfortune be mine to share, I'll never forsake my Lord. I'll never forsake the Savior. He has never forsaken me. 'Neath his sheltering arm, I am safe from all harm. I'll never forsake my Lord. Though the tempter in efforts bold, or in subtlety as of old, should say to allure my soul, I'll never forsake my Lord. I'll never forsake the Savior. He has never forsaken me. 'Neath his sheltering arm, I am safe from all harm. I'll never forsake my Lord. Though so helpless I cannot see what the future may hold for me, Jesus knows and my guide will be. I'll never forsake my Lord. I'll never forsake the Savior. He has never forsaken me. 'Neath his sheltering arm, I am safe from all harm. I'll never forsake my Lord. And I hope and pray that you don't actually take it. Hi, CJ. Good morning. Good evening. Greetings, salutations.
Good evening. Good evening. Do you want
What?
me to do? Do you want me to do a little tagging?
Well, Alicia is supposed to be in the process of tagging,
Oh, okay.
but you can tag Skylar, or you can share it to
Oh,
the various pages that we should. Or
okay,
excuse me,
dokie. I will be working on Isaiah tonight while
artichoke.
listening.
Are you? You about ready for that one?
Well, I'm hopefully gonna finish lesson 4 tonight, so I'm ahead. That type of study I like to be ahead for. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. No, but Sam made it in. Sam, we may have missed you at reading this morning. Come on, man. Okay, morning for you. Missed you at reading this evening for me. Did you get Skylar tagged, Alicia? Good. Oh, well, she tagged him, I guess.
I texted him and I hit by the way goodbye. He's like, "Oh, thank you." That's when he came in. Is that work?
Yeah.
I'm like, "Heck, of course, work's gonna get into that."
You was sleeping. You know you're not supposed to do that. It's plenty of time to rest when you're dead. Ah. Not all this gold and silver can make a sinner whole. What shall it profit thee, O man, if thou shouldst lose thy soul? What shall it profit a man? What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? The heaping up of riches to many seems life's goal, but in the eager rush for wealth forgotten is the soul. What shall it profit a man? What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? This solemn question answer, is worldly gain thy goal? Can fleeting riches be compared to an immortal soul? What shall it profit a man? What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Angie says, "Hello, everyone. I was a day ahead of myself. I noticed in the reading. So today, skip a whole day." Well, we can have CJ skip the whole day if he wants to tomorrow, right? He can read twice. You know, he can read. He can read today's tomorrow again.
What happened?
Sasapa, brother. Sasapa.
I'm not catching up. Just text me, Angie, what you want me to do tomorrow.
Okay, I've got to explain that little word. I think that little acronym, I believe, for you. When I first started gaming, because I got really heavy into the online games. Back in 2003 is when I began online gaming. Um, I was into what is known as an MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role playing game, MMORPG. And we were, I began running with, began running with a clan, and or a guild, however, which every game has a different way of saying it. To some it's clans, to some it's guilds, to some it's alliances, to some it's families. It just kind of depends upon the game. And in this particular one, it was a clan. And so I began running with a clan, and we were running around. We were killing monsters in the game, and we were playing in this certain area, and this particular individual comes up and starts uh, stealing our kills, otherwise known as kill stealing or KSing us. And um, I did anyway, as leader of the party and as leader of the clan. I had a long drawn out argument with him that ended in me telling him to see above statement about paying attention, because we were running around in circles in our argument. So I finally said, see above statement about paying attention. There was a long drawn out silence. And we found out later, I asked him later, because he inevitably ended up applying for the the clan, and we accepted him. But I found out later he went and he scrolled back through our entire conversation looking for the place where I told him to pay attention. Hey, Rebecca, good to see you. We missed you at reading. We missed Angie too, but I think she was just lurking. He went back through probably 15 minutes worth of conversation looking for where I said to pay attention. And so that began the SASAPA, SASAPA, see above statement about paying attention. And I began that acronym anytime somebody's not paying attention. So if you're not paying attention and I tell you to SASAPA, uh, it means that you're not paying attention, and you should be really paying attention.
I was paying attention.
No, you weren't. You were working on Isaiah.
Now I get it. I put tomorrow's reading today. So I guess I'm off for tomorrow, right?
No, you're gonna have to read today's reading tomorrow.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay.
But it caused us no end of delight. That particular incident did. We actually got a good laugh out of it, and he did too, because he did tell us, we were laughing about it in party, and then later on when he joined, we asked him about it, and he did. He actually admitted, yes, I did scroll back through 15 minutes of conversation trying to figure out where you told me to pay attention. Hmm. I love the fire, but it dries out my eyes really quickly and makes them itchy. That's a beautiful fire, though. Here's another one. And if you guys have any questions or topics or song requests that you wish, don't hesitate to pop them up there and ask. I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Lord, how indeed I find thy power and thine alone can cleanse the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save, my lips shall still repeat. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. That's actually a really pretty song. First time I ever got that ending just right, too. And all the time I've sung it, I've always flubbed the ending. And by the way, I am singing from the hymns for worship tonight. Don't let that stop you, though. Hey, Alicia, I need a refill. Skylar, good to see you this evening again. Working on getting off work. I'll check back when I get to my girlfriend's. Well, tell Alicia I said hi. That is, if you're still with Alicia. I guess I've never asked. Walk with me. Walk with me. Walk with me. Lest mine eyes no longer see all the glory, all the story of your love.
to me, talk to me, like you spoke so tenderly. When you walk there, when you walk there by the sea. Let me follow in the footsteps that trod the shore of Galilee. Let me learn to pray like he did in the garden of Gethsemane. Take my hand, take my hand, teach me, Lord, to understand all my duty, all the beauty of your love. Talk with me, lest mine eyes no longer hear all the wonder, all the beauty of your grace. Walk with me, as you walk so lovingly. When you walk there, when you talk there by the sea. Let me follow in the footsteps that trod the shores of Galilee. Let me learn to pray like he did in the garden of Gethsemane. Take my hand, take my hand, teach me, Lord, to understand all my duty, all the beauty of your love.
Yes, it is, Reba. Angie asked us a question. Since one of our sisters shared an article about was Jesus born in a manger? Technically, he was born in a barn. Where's your proof, Reba? He was placed in a manger. What?
Were you born in a barn? Well, Jesus could say, well, yes, I was.
All right. How do we know that? Well, we're going to go to actually to Luke chapter 3. There's 2. 2 or 3. 2. So if Alicia will take us to Luke chapter 2. Or whoever's on tech, take me to Luke chapter 2. Wait a minute. I need to go to Luke 2 now. I can wait on the drink. You should have gotten the drink a long time ago, my dear. like during the last song. Whoa. Thank you. All right, who's playing with the layouts? Now you got only half my face. I liked it better the other way around. Thank you. Much better. 2. Sorry about that. And it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. The new king, the King James actually says should be taxed. This census first took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of those. Would you back it up just a minute? Was of the house and lineage of David. Verse 5. To be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered, and she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. So from this text, what we can see then is, number one, that the Bible is very specific. Luke was very specific as to when this happened. It was in the days of Caesar Augustus. This was the second Caesar, the second emperor of the Roman Empire, the first one being Julius Caesar, Augustus's uh, uncle. And Augustus was actually originally named Octavian or Octavius, depending upon who you look at. But when he assumed the mantle of emperor, he changed his name to Augustus. And this was after a long and convoluted battle, as it were, against the general of uh, Julius's army, Julius's best friend, also Mark Antony. You had Caesar Augustus, who was or I should say, you had Octavius, who was the favored of Rome and the troops there. You had Mark Antony, who was favored of the legions and of Egypt. But Caesar, Octavius actually won out because of the support of the Senate. And he was actually a better leader. Anyhow, so he mentions the days. That was the days of Caesar Augustus. Augustus orders a census to be taken, or a taxation, whichever, a registration, so that for the purposes of taxing. They had to do it, as you see in verse 3, by lineage. Everyone went to be registered in his own city. And you also see it was done during specific time period during the days of Caesar. By the way, I didn't mention this in verse 2. Quirinius was the governor of Syria. So you can go through the Roman emperor or Roman records and look, okay, under Caesar Augustus, was there a ruler named Quirinius in Syria? And when you find him, these names are so specific that you can trace them in the historical or in the Roman record. In fact, they were able, it took a little bit, outside to find archaeological evidence, but or of Pontius Pilate, but they were able to do it on some old, I think it was coins or maybe a plaque, one of the two, in Palestine. So there was actual record of Pontius Pilate, for example. There's plenty of record in writing and stuff, as well as archaeological evidence in regard to uh, buildings and um, sigils and stuff like that for Herod and others of this time period that were mentioned here in the Bible, in the Gospels. So all were enrolled in his own city. Now Joseph, of course, had to go from Galilee, from Nazareth, which was in the region of Galilee, down to Bethlehem, which was south of Jerusalem, about 20 miles. I think it's 20 miles. Because he was of the city of David. He was of the lineage of David. And so he had to be enrolled or registered, and he took Mary, his betrothed wife. Why is she called his betrothed wife? Well, for the simple fact that because of her pregnancy, they have not known each other. They haven't had the husband-wife relations, quite simply. You remember in Matthew chapter 1 that in verse 1, in Matthew 1, verse 25, well, let's do 24 and 25. Then Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. So he did exactly what the angel commanded him, took her as his wife, but did not fulfill that duty of a husband to a wife until after Jesus was born. And so Luke is very much correct. Of course, we know he's inspired, but that's the reason why Luke records her as his betrothed, because that duty had not been fulfilled, which means the marriage wasn't fully consummated. But they were still married legally. So, and we can look at Matthew chapter 1, and we also see uh, how that Joseph was a son of David, and of course, if you go all the way back, a son of Abraham. In Luke chapter 3, I believe it is. I'm checking. Yes, in Luke chapter 3, we see that another set of genealogies, and that is the lineage of Mary, and she is also of the family of David. So, continuing back to Luke chapter 2, they get to Bethlehem. They're going to be enrolled, or they are being enrolled, and while they're there, well, there's no room. Luke chapter 2, verse 7, the very last phrase of 7. because there was no room for them in the inn. So they come in to Bethlehem and there's no room. There's no room. Well, why was there no room? Well, for simple reason, of course, is that there's such an influx of people coming to be registered that the town can't hold them all. And so what you have is people staying with family members. Well, they're all full. People staying at room at the inns. Well, they're all full. So what's left? This would be the cave. This would be the barns where they kept cows and the stables, in other words, where they kept the cows and the sheep and the horses. Well, maybe not the sheep, but anyway, the cows and the horses and the donkeys, etc. Perhaps even the sheep. And if you read of the accounts of people that have gone over to Bethlehem now, what you will find is that they talk extensively about the caves that are around there, where, in the town and stuff, where they would have kept the stables and for animals like the cows and the donkeys and stuff. So because there's no place for them in the inn, then she's stuck in the barn. So she gives birth in this barn because they're not out on the street. And she wraps him in swaddling clothes, which is a common practice, basically the birthing clothes. They wrap him in blankets. And cloths to protect him from the cold. We don't have to do that nowadays. Why? Well, for the simple fact that we've got all these wonderful warmers and we've got hospitals and things like that for that purpose of delivering babies. Even if you go through the midwife at your own home, you still have things set up to where it's a warm enough environment for the child. But she delivered him and wrapped him in swaddling clothes. It would not be like the big monstrosity that we call barns today. No, this would be like a cave, um, a sheltered place. No, it's not a lean-to, but it would be more of a place where the animals could go in to get out of inclement weather. Um, but no, not a place. I mean, they did have barns. They were familiar with at some level of barns because uh, their barns would be more of the case of they would have the storage for food because there was one parable where Jesus told about the rich man who had so much he decided he was going to tear down his barns, build bigger ones, and eat, drink, and be merry for the rest of his life. And God says, "You fool! Your life is required. I'm going to require your soul of you." I don't have the uh, reference right off the top of my
Luke,
head.
Luke 12, and if you
Which one?
start around Luke 12 and starting around verse 13, I believe, or 14. Oh, look at that. Well, that's
Okay,
the
so scroll down a little bit there, Alicia.
That's the conversation that spurs it.
I said scroll down a bit. We're looking at verse 16. Technically 15, but anyway. 15 through 21. 15 through 21. There. And he said to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Now verse 16. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, I really wish that I could read the rest of the verse, but somebody's got it down behind the comment. Keep up, my dear. Now scratch that, back it up, rewind. And he said to verse 16, please. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will these things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich toward God. So they were familiar with barns. Let's see, if you go back up to, what is it, that verse? Verse 18, where it says barns, and then take me over to the KJV plus. I want to look at that word barns. 18. Thank you. KJV plus is the other direction, my dear. Thank you. G596. G596. Your cursor was right on the word barns. Right there. That word. Thank you. A repository, that is granary. Huh. Apothecary. Apothecary. That's where I think that's where we get our word apothecary. Anyway. Scroll down so I can read the rest of it, my dear. That is granary, barn, garner. Thayer says. A place in which anything is laid up or laid by or up. A storehouse, a granary. And mounts. It's going to be essentially the same thing. A place where anything is laid up for preservation, repository, granary, storehouse, barn. And it's used 6 times. Matthew 3:12. Speaking of God, he says, with his winnowing fork in his hand, he will thoroughly cleanse his threshing floor. He will gather his wheat into the barn, but the straw he will burn with unquenchable fire. It's actually speaking of the Holy Spirit. No. That was John speaking of the one who is greater than him. That's what it was. So they were familiar with barns of a sort. Was this essentially the barn like what we would consider a barn today? Evidence out there points to it being a cave. Now it would have, even if it was a cave, it would have had it would have a door to be able to shut the animals in, because you don't want your livestock running off. You don't want your cows wandering the field at night and being taken by, robbers and bandits. Um, so it would have been a place where they could have been out of the shelter and still have had adequate accommodation. And there are plenty enough accounts, even going forward um, into the medieval times, into Victorian and Edwardian times of England, and even into the early part of this country, where people still made their beds in the barns because there wouldn't be room in hotels, you know or the farmers wouldn't want them in the house because there wasn't room in the house. Like your one room cabins, for example, they didn't have a lot of room. There was room enough for the family, and so they would allow the travelers, to sleep in the barn, type of a situation. So Mary and Joseph are spending the night in the barn, and you stop and think of it. There wasn't a room for a pregnant lady who was due to deliver in an inn. Um, that's kind of a commentary on society of that day, wouldn't it be? Well, yes, and we're not far different. We like to think we're more civilized, but um, in a lot of cases, we're not, are we? So so Mary wrapped Jesus in the swaddling clothes, and she placed him where? Going back to our text, Alicia. Luke 2 and verse 7. Now, she wrapped him in swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger. Let's look at the word swaddling real quick, just so you guys can get an idea, in case you don't know, like CJ, um, who's not quite so familiar with swaddling, because it's not a term used anymore. Scroll up just a line or so. There you are, swaddling clothes, G4683, I think. To swathe or wrap in swaddling cloths. Thanks, Mounts. You're really a strip, from a derivative of the base, meaning to strap with or wrap with strips. To swathe. I can't read the rest of it. Swathe an infant after the Oriental custom. Wrap in swaddling clothes. And there, it's going to be essentially the same thing. To wrap in swaddling clothes of an infant just born. So basically, strips of cloth. Um, we might liken it to a mummy. A mummy was wrapped in strips of cloth. Well, so was a baby. G846, please. Oh, G846 is the word him. I can tell you that right now. Don't worry about it. So, and swathed him in and laid him in a manger is the way it would literally read. Um, laid him in a manger. Looking at the manger, we all are kind of familiar. We remember the nativity scenes, and you've got this box that's basically in an X shape. It's got X-shaped legs, and a V-shaped box that's hung between them. Um, mangers take different forms. It can be just a simple trough with legs. It can be the V-shaped box. It can be just simply a box that's mounted to the wall, or a bucket, by the way. One way to think of it is a feeding trough. Um, Now, feeding trough is a long rectangular box, sometimes mounted about waist high, sometimes it is mounted low to the ground, depending upon what you are feeding. If you're feeding oxen or well, donkeys, it'll be at least waist high to almost rib cage high. If you're feeding pigs or goats, well, if you're feeding pigs, it'll be down, or dogs and cats, for example, it'll of course be down on the ground, and you would have like a single leg that is placed horizontally to the ground or parallel to the ground um, on either end. If you're feeding goats and sheep, of course, it would be anywhere between knee to mid thigh high. So it just kind of depends. Suffice it to say that in this case, it was a place that would be comforting and um, warm for the child. It was a manger. G5336, Alicia. He wasn't born in a manger, but he was placed in a manger after he was born. To be born in the manger would require her to be actually laying in the manger itself, but that's not what the Bible says. Fatney, let me see. Let's scroll up. I want to see the top. Okay, 5336, Fatney. Now scroll down. A crib for fodder, a manger or stall. This is specifically for an animal to eat food, thus a crib or manger. So where was Jesus born? Bethlehem. No, but where in Bethlehem? In a barn. And so he was born in a barn. They would have made a nice, comfortable spot in one of the stalls or in the hayloft. But since they're putting him in a manger, they were in a stall. And then he was placed in the manger. What's interesting in regards to the manger idea, or the manger aspect of it, is very similar to the reason that they swathe babies. A baby who leaves the closeness of a mother's womb for the huge emptiness of this world, the huge space, is frightened. And one of the things that frightened babies do is scream and holler. You swathe the babies into those clothes, you keep them warm, you give them a sense of that closeness that they had just a few moments ago, and you keep them calm. Placing the baby into the manger does a double duty as giving that sense of the womb and keeping the child warm. Scenes of how, especially at the time, uh, you're outside. You don't, I mean, even though you're in a barn, you're still outside. It's not got the same insulation value as a house, a home with, even if it isn't a cave, there's at least drafts that are going to come through because of where it's at. And if it's in a wooden structure, You can't build a fire. So you run because you're going to run the risk of burning the place down. We know that they weren't out in the fields because additionally, as we go down through the account, what happens with the shepherds? Let's see, go back to our text. Let's go down to let's look at verse 8, and then we're going to skip a few verses as I go through this. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields. So they're not in homes. They're not in town. They're not in the inn. They're not in the barn. They're out in the fields. Back up. Let's see. I didn't finish. Keeping watch over their flock by night. So they're out there in the fields. The sheep are not even in the sheepcotes or in the folds, as they're also known. The shepherds are watching over them at night. And as they're watching over the sheep, suddenly they have a great light, the glory of the Lord shone around them. The angel of the Lord appeared, and tells them that and let's look at verse 11 and 12, please. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. Let's go ahead and actually let's read 10 through 12. Then the angel said to them, do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find the babe wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger. And suddenly let's keep going, I guess. There was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill toward men. So let's look at this and kind of go through this really quickly. As we already said, the shepherds are in the field. They're watching out over their flock at night. They're not in the sheepcote or in the fold. The angel appears. The Lord's glory shines around them. The angel of the Lord brings good tidings, good news, great joy to all people, not just the Jews, to all people. That's verse 10. The end of 10. Okay, which will be to all people, and we see then that the angel tells exactly where the child is. It's in the city of David, and he says, "This will be the sign to you. You will find the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, or swaddling cloths, lying in a manger." You're not going to find a manger in a house. Where are you going to find a manger? Well, in a place where animals are. And so there's the sign. And suddenly, with the angel, a multitude of heaven, verse 13, was there praising God. And verse 14, they said, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. I want you to note that this goodwill, this peace, is toward men. Um, this is not peace between men. This is goodwill toward man. Who's that from? Who is the peace and the goodwill from? Wake up, Reba. Wake up, Sam. Wake up, Sister Angie. Right, CJ. God. Alicia, you need to make sure you keep, I guess that might be CJ. You need to capitalize that. Okay, so it's from God. This is not peace between men and men. This is peace from God. And this is borne out because who is our peace? What is the goodwill? I mean, Jesus is our peace. And the Bible tells us that who is our peace is, I think, the actual phrase. Um, and he is God's favor to men. That's what goodwill is, favor. So we have the grace of God. We have, when Jesus was born, there was peace. Peace was given on earth, or peace was now on earth. And God's favor was now on earth. Yes, salvation was coming. That was the future there. But Jesus was God. Jesus is God's peace. Jesus is God's favor towards men. And he was now on earth. And that's just something really cool to think about. Um, and look at the passages that detail that. All right, so the angels in verse 15 return to heaven. When they have gone away back to heaven, that the shepherds say to one another, let's now go to Bethlehem and see this thing which has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. And so in verse 16, they come, and they came in with haste. They basically were running, and they ran and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Um, so they came, they come running. They found it just like God said, and they declared everything that had been told them about the child. And Mary, of course, in verse 19, treasures up these words in her heart and her memory, pondering them. And the shepherds go back home, glorifying and praising God for what they had seen and heard. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many years later, when Jesus came preaching and teaching, were these same shepherds still alive? Were they remembering that particular night? It just makes you wonder what kind of an impact it had on them through the rest of their life. So anyway, that's the account of the birth of Jesus. And then we find, I'm gonna try to go through a little bit more of the story, because you have some misconceptions regarding the Christmas story as it was. And one thing you find is in most nativity scenes, you find you know Joseph and Mary and a baby, and you have the donkeys and maybe an ox, and you have the three wise men. and you might even have a shepherd or two. But what have we seen so far? Well, what we have seen so far is Joseph and Mary. We have seen a manger. We have seen Jesus in the manger. We have not necessarily seen um, we haven't seen any animals with them. That's not to say there wasn't any, or there weren't any. But we haven't seen any in the account. And we saw the shepherds. And by the way, magi just simply means wise men. And some have used magi in some form. It also, in some languages it also means magician, but it's in the Greek it just means wise men. Um, I'm not even sure if it's actually written as magi or magi, depending upon how you want to refer to it. Anyway, now in verse 21 through in 21 through 38, what we have is after 8 days, them going up to Jerusalem and doing the circumcision. Okay. And we have Simon, a devout man in Jerusalem, um, and the Holy Spirit telling him he was going to be able to see the Christ before he died. And he knew Jesus at once. And then you have the prophetess Anna in verse 36, daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She had a husband for 7 years, after which he died. She was of a great age, had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity. Um, let's see here. And she was about a widow of about 84 years. So that can be taken a couple of ways. She was either 84 years old or and a widow, or she was a widow who had been widowed for 84 years. Um, however you want to take it, the thing of it is that it was important enough that Luke noted that she was a widow, and that she had lived with a husband for 7 years from her virginity. Um, um, so that's an interesting thought to ponder, but it's not, doesn't really pertain to anything at the moment. Uh, Sam talks about the law of Moses in regards to circumcision. Yes, it was. Uh, the law of Moses declared that on the 8th day the child was to be circumcised, and that there was a medical reason for that, which of course they didn't know. It just simply was that was what was told them. And he also mentions the different gospel talking about the Magi or the 3 wise men. If we look in chapter 2 of Matthew is where we find the three wise, or the wise men, and there's never listed as to how many wise men there were. It just says wise men. So Matthew chapter 2. If my tech person will get on the ball and get back to the Bible instead of being on a different tab like she's not supposed to be. Matthew chapter 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from east of Jerusalem, from the east came to Jerusalem. We're not told how many wise men there. There was more. No, that's not most likely, Sam. It was more than one, for the simple fact that, let's just scroll back up just another line. It says right there, wise men, not a wise man, but wise men. The use of the plural there denotes that there was more than one. We don't have to guess on that. There was more than one, but we're not told how
And
many.
just to bolster that, look at verse 2. Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star.
That doesn't necessarily hold water, CJ, for one particular reason. There is in English what is known as the royal we, and that is where royalty, nobility, refers to themselves in the plural. I can say, talking of myself, well, we sat down to do the live stream. And I'm talking of myself only. We host a live stream every day. We are hungry. Bring us some food. It's a case of the royal we is what it's called. And so even though I'm referring to myself in the plurality, I'm only referring to myself. So that is the conundrum, or that is the problem with assuming that just because there's a plural pronoun there, that it automatically means that there was a plurality of people. You're not wrong in this case because of verse 1. So because of verse 1, you are absolutely correct in that it bolsters it bolsters verse 1, saying there's more than one. But I just want you to be aware of the royal we. Hey, welcome back, Skylar. So the wise men do absolutely say, we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. So King Herod hears this and was disturbed, verse 3. All Jerusalem with him. He gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people and were asking them where the Christ was to be born. And so they found out, okay, it's in Judea, Bethlehem of Judea. For so the prophet has written. And he goes back to, is it Micah? It's like Isaiah, Jeremiah, or Micah. Can't remember which one. And Alicia, if you're not going to do tech, get out of there and get Ezra in there. We are on verse 4, actually verse 5.
Yeah, Micah 5:2 is what's quoted there in 2:6. That's the prophet.
Thank you. Hey, I got it right initially. So in Bethlehem of Judea, for so the prophet has written, you, verse 6, you, Bethlehem, Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for from you a ruler will come who will be a shepherd for my people Israel. So this is Micah 5:2. So then Herod secretly calls for the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared, and then sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go search diligently for the child, and when you find him, let me know, that I also may go and worship him. Alicia, would you go over to back to Luke, and I want to look at the word babe in Luke. Luke chapter 2, and verse 12. Okay. So we want to look at the word babe. Brephos, of uncertain affinity, an infant, properly an unborn, literally or figuratively, babe. Brephos. And by the way, Sam, can you show me what verse in Luke chapter 2 indicates that the shepherd saw the star? Now, Brephos, what was the number on that one, please? Scroll up all the way to the top. 1025. Let me see what Thayer says. Unborn child, embryo, a fetus, a newborn child, an infant, a babe. Okay, now mounts. A child, whether unborn or an unborn, an embryo, fetus, or just born, an infant. So this word, brephos, is used 8 times in the entire scriptures. Infant. Okay, remember that. Now go back over to Matthew chapter 2, and I want you to look at the word for child. In verse 8, Matthew 2:8. Hey, Ruel. Okay, so for the young child, G3813. So it's definitely not brephos, because that's not the same word. It's not 1025. So what was it? 3813 is an infant, a babe, but it's paedan. Used by way of endearment, my dear children, also a term of familiar address. Okay, so, but usually in the New Testament as equivalent to, I don't know what that word is. All right, go to Strong's. Paedion, okay. Neuter diminutive, a child or childling, that is properly an infant, or by extension, a half-grown boy or girl, figuratively an immature Christian, little, young, or child, or damsel. Okay, so now Thayer's. Haitian says theirs means a young child, a little boy or a little girl. It can be infants. It can be children, little ones, an infant of a male child just recently born, or of a more advanced child, of a mature child, metaphorically children, like children in intellect. So if they were wanting to say babe, they would have used brephos. But now an infant is not necessarily a babe, right? It can be a babe, but an infant is anyone basically up to the toddler stage, from newborn to toddler. Watch this. Go back to the KJV or NKJV, whichever. So Herod sends them out to find where the child is, um, gives them the location. So they go out, leave Jerusalem, and when they leave Jerusalem, there's the star. They find the star again. They see it again. Um, and they were overjoyed at seeing that star, verse 10. Uh, um, Sam, you're not making sense there. Keeper of the flock is a shepherd. That's not why. That's not the wise men. We're not talking about those. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. These are wise men, and we can go look at the word wise men here in a minute. Go ahead.
I think he was saying for proof that the shepherd saw the star.
But I would say that the shepherds saw lots of stars. The difference between the wise men and the shepherds is the wise men made a habit of studying the stars. If you notice what the wise men say in Matthew chapter 2 and verse 2, they say, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. It is known, well documented in archaeology, through references in wide references in writings of many of the different cultures, that there were astrologers. Now we think of astrologers as the mystics that we have today, where they look at, um, uh, Aquarius is rising and Mars is setting, and that type of thing. But that's not always the case. What these guys did is they studied the stars and they watched and they had records. And when this star was at this position, they would look and they would see this is a bright star, and they would record that progress through the sky. And they kept detailed records, and they would train their followers, their students, to continue to watch. And they would basically, when certain stars were in the sky, certain things happened. That's why they looked and they saw this star, and they immediately thought, okay, this is an important star. There is some important being that has just happened. Now, how they knew it was the King of the Jews, that's beyond my pay grade, because the Bible doesn't tell us how they knew it was. I'm not going to even jump through hoops trying to assume. What I am going to say is this. They came into Jerusalem saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east." And they came following that star, um, which is told us there. Uh, and understand. Let's look at verse 7, please. Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, he determined from them what time the star appeared. This is important later on in the account. But Herod knew down to exactly when that star had appeared. The wise men knew exactly when that star appeared, and they began their journeys. They did their research, what have you, but they began looking for the King of the Jews at that point in time. Um, Now, continuing on, when they left Jerusalem, when the king had those who had heard the king departed, and when they left Jerusalem, when they left the king, in verse 9, um, behold, there's the star. Verse 9. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. So they were led by that star. Um, that's kind of significant, isn't it? That here they are following this star, and the star is moving. I want you to picture this in your mind. And they walk past. Let's just play this out in this supposition. They walk past the door of the house where Mary and Joseph and Jesus is, and the star is no longer in front of them. What? They start looking around. What? They turn around. Oh, there it is. So go back. But it stood over the house where the child was. Or the place where the child was. It doesn't say that it stood over the manger where the child was. It doesn't say that it stood over the barn where the child was. Now, why am I saying house? Well, let's look at verse 10 and let's continue reading. When they saw the star, they greatly rejoiced, or they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay, pausing there. Back to verse 11, was it? Yes, thank you. They entered the house. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus were no longer in the barn. They were in a house in Bethlehem. They had not returned to Nazareth. And the use of young child moves the idea of babe completely out of the picture. So let's look at in 2 verse 11. Let's look at child again. In the King James Plus. Let's look at that. Okay. where the young child, G3813, I think we're going to find it still the Paidion. Yes, that one right there. Yep, Paidion. Young child, little boy, little girl. So it's interesting that they go from the child to the young child in the New King James. So when Herod's looking for him, he sends them out saying, "Go search diligently for the child." And then in verse 11, suddenly it's the young child. Now, where do we, so they're in a house. They're no longer in the the barn with the manger. He's no longer a baby, as in a babe, newborn. He's a young child now, somewhere between newborn and toddler, newborn and bar mitzvah. No, Sam, they're not in an inn. It says they're in a house. So they are either with family or they have bought a house. Remember that Joseph is of the family of David. So and so is Mary. So they have relations back here in Bethlehem. So they're either staying with family or they are or they have purchased a house. And so they open they worship Jesus. Go back to the text, please. Yes, one is God spoke to them. That's an option. And wise men saw the stars, they're looking for it. Well, the portent, the omen is, of course, that some auspicious person was born. So like I said, when this particular star came, it heralded the birth of an important person, usually kings. And so it has appeared again, and therefore a king must have been born. And so they started looking and trying to figure out where. But my supposition, and I'll leave it at that, is that God had told them this was his child. This was the King of the Jews. I don't know. But back on topic over here, or back on the track that we were at. The reason that most people label it as three wise men is because of the three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh at the end of verse 11. But again, we're not told how many there were, only that there was more than one. And they were then received, once they presented their gifts, they were warned. Next verse 12, let's see. Once they presented these costly spices, frankincense and myrrh, and of course, the gold. Verse 12 tells us, then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Now, this is not the shepherds, Sam, for the simple fact that these are coming from a different country far in the east. Was it Persia? Again, are we told? Is it important? It could have been Persia, it could have been India, it could have been China. Somewhere way over in China. It could have been Indonesia. It could have been Japan. We're not told. All we're told is that it was from the east. And by the way, any one of those had their soothsayers and their astrologers, etc. India and Persia were known for their astrologers, by the way. Okay. So they leave and they go home by a different way. Now, when they had departed, an angel of the Lord, a messenger from God, says, Joseph, it's time for you to get out of here. I'm paraphrasing. Rise. Verse 13, please. Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Now, here's where the gifts of the wise men come into play. They're going on a long journey. They're going to need funds for where they're going and for how long they're going to be there. So he arises, he takes the young child, his mother, by night, leaves for Egypt. And he stays there until Herod dies. And if we jump down, after Herod's death, the Lord, the angel then appears to Joseph, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, go into the land of Israel, for the ones seeking his life have died. So he rises and goes with the child and the mother and goes back to Israel. It doesn't tell us again how long he lived, but it was quite a while down there. And what did it do? It fulfilled another prophecy of the Lord, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son. Some people thought, when that prophecy was given, some people thought it was speaking in regards to Israel coming up out of Egypt, and yet there we have it. Bible explains it. What was that called, CJ, in prophecy class?
Verbal prediction.
Is that the one where? No, that's not. I don't think that's where it is. Is it?
Indirect. Indirect. It may have an ultimate initial fulfillment to the Jews, but yeah, what it's really talking about, what Matthew applies it to is Jesus.
Right. So we wouldn't know except that the Bible explains it elsewhere, applies it elsewhere. So Herod, he gets upset because he sees that the wise men tricked him. Verse 16. And in anger, he then decides to kill all the boys in Bethlehem because this is the king. He doesn't want any challenges to his kingship, to his reign. And so this king out of Idumea, Herod, goes and has all the male children put to death in Bethlehem. Now, he does it with a specific age limit. That is from 2 years old and under. Now, the reason he does that is because that was according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Remember what we said in verse 7. Back in verse 7, he went and diligently and learned precisely, determined from them what time the star appeared. This is the reason why it was important to note that, because in verse 16, Herod took that information and killed all the children under 2 years and under. That implies that Jesus was no older than 2 years, but he was definitely not a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes in a manger when the wise men came and presented their gifts. Because otherwise, 2 years and under wouldn't have needed to be killed. All he would have had to kill was those who were, a month and under, or a year and under. But this fulfilled a prophecy also of, I believe it's Isaiah, where a voice was heard in Ramah, weeping in terrible mourning. Rachel wept for her children and refused to be comforted, for her children were no more. Or Jeremiah, rather, not Isaiah. Jeremiah said that. So, what do we have to look for this from this? One, Mary gave birth to Jesus in a barn. Two, Jesus was wrapped in swaddling cloths and put in a manger after his birth. Three, the shepherds came on the night of Jesus' birth and found him wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger. Now, we are not told that the shepherds gave any note to any star in the sky. Just as a side note, that's a freebie. And I mean, Luke does not record any reference to that. Would they have seen that star? Absolutely. Would they have given any notation to it? No. I guess not absolutely, because there are stars that we see here that Sam doesn't see. Or that I can see now that Sam doesn't see over in the Philippines. So I have to be careful about that. It's important to note that what is present in my night sky, star wise, is not a present in the in the southern hemisphere, or is not present over in the Philippines, or even in Israel at this point in time in the year. So they may not have seen that star, but the wise men in the east did see that star. Now, another thing that we from the Luke's account is that when Jesus was born, God's peace and goodwill toward men was on earth. He shall be called the Prince of Peace, Emmanuel, which means is being interpreted God with us. Anyway, another thing is that he didn't stay in that barn for very long. We know that Joseph and Jesus and Mary went up to Jerusalem at 8 days, and Jesus was circumcised, according to Luke chapter 2, verses 21 through 36, 38. Well, yeah. Interestingly enough, I should also note this, that in 39, in Luke 2:39, Luke records that everything according to the law was completed, and they returned to their own city, Nazareth of Galilee. The child grew and became strong, being filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him, which would indicate that perhaps they returned to Bethlehem at a different time. I don't know. That's not because 39 and 40 could also be indicative of after they come back as well from Egypt. However, what we do know is that in Matthew chapter 2, we have the account of the wise men. There is not there is no limit on how many um, men there are there, just that there was more than one. Um, This is the next thing we can learn from this, is that they had an exact time when the star appeared, and that they arrived in Jerusalem sometime within 2 years after Jesus was born. Mary and Joseph, and the third thing from Matthew's account is that Mary and Joseph and Jesus were in a house, not in the barn anymore. The third thing is that the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, again, even though there was 3 different types of gifts, we're not told how much of each gift was given. So there could have been, again, with more than one, if we had 5 wise men, for instance, there could have been duplicates. 2 of them could have given gold, and 2 of them could have, one of them could have given frankincense, one could have given myrrh, and another person could have given both frankincense and myrrh. We're not told. And so we shouldn't just simply say, okay, there were 3 wise men, just because there was 3 different types of gifts. Next on the lesson from it is the fact that that Herod killed all the babies 2 years and under, and therefore that gives us the time frame for how old Jesus was when the wise men came. He was no older than 2 years, but no younger than an infant, but no longer an infant, let me put it that way. Um, let's see, there was something else I was going to say. Um, I don't know. I understood that, Sam. I just wanted to throw that. I wanted to use what you said as a springboard, my brother. Stars seem so close to your eyes. This is the different times of a day, maybe. Well, if you're talking about the stars, they actually rotate because the Earth rotates. Not necessarily because the stars rotate, but the Earth rotates on its axis, and as it rotates, well, different stars at different places and different times of the year. Also, as the tilt of the Earth determines what stars are seen in what hemisphere at what time of the year. Alicia, take us back to to verse 1 of chapter 2, and I want to look at the word for wise men in the KJV plus. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. The word wise men. Magos, which is where we get the term magi. Magus, the name given by the Babylonians, Chaldeans, Medes, Persians, and others to the wise men, teachers, priests, physicians, astrologers, seers, interpreters of dreams, augurs, soothsayers, sorcerers, etc. 1b, the Oriental wise men, astrologers, who, having discovered by the rising of a remarkable star that the Messiah had just been born, came to Jerusalem to worship him. And 1c, a false prophet and sorcerer. Strong's, please. Of foreign origin. So magos is not actually even an original Greek word. It's a foreign origin. It means a magian. That is, Oriental scientist, by implication, a magician, sorcerer, wise man. Okay, give me mounts. Mounts, please. Six times this word is used. Matthew 2:1, Matthew 2:7, 2:16, and Acts 13:6 and 13:8. Trying to remember 13. Anyway, Magus, sage of the magician religion, magician, astrologer, wise man, a magician, sorcerer, 13:6. Isn't that Elymas? Yeah, Acts 13 is Elymas, otherwise known as Bar-Jesus, who withstood Paul, and Paul cursed him with blindness. Acts 13:6. On the Isle of Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer. There's that same word again. A false prophet, a Jew, named Bar-Jesus, a sorcerer and false, yeah, so named Bar-Jesus, which was with the deputy of the country, Sergius Paulus. Keep going. A prudent man who called for Barnabas and Saul and desired to hear the word of God. And then here's the other one, there, 13:8. But Elymas, the sorcerer, for so is his name by interpretation, withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from the faith. So the same word for the wise men, magus, or is the word for sorcerer that's used here of Elymas / Bar-Jesus, whom Paul curses with blindness for a season. And what was interesting to me was how Strong's and Mounts both say that that was a foreign word, which basically tells us that that was a transliteration into the Greek of a different word. And Thayer's tells us that it comes from the Hebrew and the Chaldeans. The Hebrew, or not the Hebrew, the Babylonians slash Chaldeans, the Persians, the Medes, and of these particular men. So that would imply then, or that would mean actually, that Daniel was considered a magus, because he was one who interpreted dreams. He was a wise man. He was a soothsayer, and was lumped in with those lot in the book of Daniel. So yeah, it wouldn't be unheard for them to be coming from Babylon, from Persia, from India, from the Oriental aspect, from China. So all we know though is that they are wise men from the east, and they came, and it took them roughly 2 years, give or take, um, a month or two, um, give or take a few months, to reach Jerusalem and the stable, or not stable, the house where Jesus was. I hope that has cleared up anything or answered any questions that Angie may have had. I think she's gone and fallen asleep, because that's usually what I end up doing for her, putting her to sleep. Um, and poor sister, she is so tired after having worked so much. Sister Reba, how are you? I didn't get a chance to ask you tonight at reading, and I don't think I saw you last night. So I'm asking you now. How are you? Sam, if you want to go and talk and find more information about Daniel, I'll point you to our gospel edification meeting on the book of Daniel that CJ and I did earlier this year, actually. It was earlier this year, wasn't it, CJ, or was it late last year? Oh, good.
I don't know. I feel like we did. Have we done a gospel meeting since 2022?
Yes, we started out this year with a couple of gospel edification meetings. We did one in January, we did one in March, and then you did one in June. No. You did the one in March. My apologies. We did one in January. You did the one in March, and we were supposed to have one in May, but June was coming, and we were going to have the gospel meeting at our congregation. So that was the last one. Well, we tried to have the one down at Davis City for the all-day meeting in August, which didn't really work out so hot, but hey, it was there. Down the hallway and back twice. Yay! So now tomorrow you're going to do that again, and then each day you're going to get, or every other day, is it you're going to get farther and farther, or what? We did, Sam, we did a Faith's Hall of Fame on Daniel, and that was quite a in-depth study. And we will get back into the gospel edification meetings again next year. I think. I haven't talked to CJ about it, but I think that he's raring to go on them. And so we're going to start if that's the case, we're going to start back up in January. And I think last January we did Sarah, didn't we? it was last January or last March that we did Sarah. I was supposed to help with it, but I ended up having specials or something that I had to go do. So anyhow, I do want to point out now that we've gotten through the gospel edification meeting, and before I let you all go, again, I want to remind you that CJ's got an Isaiah class coming up in January for study to show yourself approved. Ooh, Friday. Praise the Lord. Well, we'll continue to keep praying for you as we do every day, Sister Reba. Um, yes, hopefully, make it home, my sister. Sam's literally looking forward to it. He did his own study on it, but you all do a good job on it. Well, thank you. Well, I mean, we've already done the gospel edification meeting, so, but where was I at? Oh, yes, he's got that Isaiah class coming up in January. And of course, our brother CJ, he just never is one to let grass grow under his feet. He's always on the move, so I know that he has other things going on for the new year, including a new Bible reading schedule, I believe. Furthermore, join us, won't you, on New Year's Eve for our 3-hour, or is it 3 3-hour ringing in the new year with songs and prayer, as CJ O'Shea and I, possibly maybe some others. 4? I see 4. I see 5 fingers.
No, 1, 2, 3, 3. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, yo.
I don't think my voice would handle 5 hours.
I don't know if I'll be able to. I'm gonna try to go for all 3 hours. I may conk out.
Get plenty of sleep the night before. Anyway, join us, won't you, for that 3-hour stream? Because we're looking forward to seeing you there. Because I have found it a blessing to ring in the new year with that method. It has improved, I think, our years, and has been a really great blessing for us. I think starting the new year off with God as our focus is the best way to start the year. So, with that being said, I hope and pray that our time together has been an edification to you, that you have drawn some strength spiritually from our time together. And I hope and pray that you will be drawn closer to God that way, whether we wake tomorrow to serve God here on this earth, or we wake tomorrow to serve Him up there, where we all long to be. Where I'll be. Where I'll see you then.